Today, we visit with Bryan Haynes out of Washington, Missouri. I'm Rick J., and this is Spotlight on the Arts. Welcome to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm Rick J., your host, and coming to you again from Washington, Missouri. Mr. Bryan Haynes is my guest today, and I would ask you please to welcome with me Mr. Haynes, returning to Spotlight on the Arts here. He was last with us November 11th, 2017. And we had just settled here into your new gallery in Washington, Missouri. Time has passed so fast, and if any of our viewers have been watching your art production these past 4 years, they can agree with me that you've really been busy with everything. So for our viewers, Bryan, if I may call you by your first, could you share with us how you, with the new viewers especially, how you first was inspired to become an artist?
Well, welcome, Rick. Thanks for coming to the gallery. I always like having any visitors. And so it's good to pick up on our conversation after so much time. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
Well, gosh, starting at the beginning, I guess we are. As a child, I just created, with scissors and glue and messing up the carpet.
Oh, yes.
And just, I guess my parents were really what was important in my life, to encourage from the very beginning, always, making a big deal about everything that we made as kids. And
yes.
And that led to people describing me as an artist, and whatever that meant at the time. I guess we start then to self-describe ourselves, don't
yes.
we? In that, with using that title. So it was just an aptitude maybe between hand and brain that
yes.
That became strengthened, and then you call it an artist. I don't know.
Yes. I think we finally started in a sense getting the sense of being an artist. We've talked to different artists, also like David Plank and another David Carter, where we wonder sometimes if it's within the DNA, even back to the days of the cavemen, writing on the walls. The other party goes out and does the hunt, and he records it on the walls, and becomes a way to earn his meat or his meal when they return from the hunt.
The storyteller.
Yeah, the storyteller.
Yeah.
Again, with the brush or charcoal or whatever they could find back then.
Yeah.
And I was fortunate at your opening here at the gallery.
Yeah.
And to meet your mother and father.
Yeah.
And they was inspired about your art that day. I could imagine as much as inspired as you as a 2 or 3, 4-year-old. So.
Well, thanks for remembering them. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a great story, and I think that's how it seems like almost like it's in our DNA. I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I have to ask you then, what inspires you to continue? And I guess that would be easily answered, but you have a different story. I mean, you have really progressed in your artwork.
Thank you.
And saturated United States way. So give us a little your heartfelt feelings on what it's like now to be inspired or continued to be inspired.
Well, I guess it started as it's a profession now. So yes, there are moments of inspiration, but I guess it's just been so many years, 38 years now, professionally supporting myself and family with my art. It started going to art school, Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, California. And it's a very elite design school. They had photography, film, fashion, car design, environmental design, and illustration. So I was got a fine arts degree there, but really it's based on design. And so I think if you looked at my work now, you would still see the composition designed by an illustrator, because that's what I was for 25 years.
Oh, I see.
Freelance, doing books and magazines and billboards and advertising campaigns and telling stories. I mean, that's what an illustrator does and did back then. This is the days in the 1980s and 1990s when illustration was still done by hand.
Yes.
Meaning paint on a board. Has to dry quickly because you're shipping it off to New York the next day, and so
I see.
So to me, it doesn't feel like much of a transition to where I am now, which is fine art painting,
Right.
but still in the realm of storytelling. In a traditional way, first with a drawing and then a painting, and
Applicable. All that you've learned and built
Yes.
a foundation on can be, you can turn the wrench a different way, I guess you could say, for
Yeah.
a mechanic.
but it's the same tool.
Now, I interviewed a gentleman from Latvia about 2 years ago. His name is Pride,
Ah.
and he was really into that California market, known as one of the best illustrators back in the lithograph.
Oh,
So you might have run across him, I thought maybe,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that was kind of, it basically gave me an idea of what foundation was, where as a child I was just drawing with whatever I could get a hold of. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I also, Doug Freed is, I said, well, how do you define an artist that's really not professional? He said, well, they're called outsiders because they're the ones that have gone to school and got their degree and are making a living from it. That's what we refer to them out of no disrespect.
Oh, yeah.
But when you're doing it like yourself, to basically earn a living and have fun doing it, I guess that's the ultimate example. Well, COVID-19, we all went through that, a lot of cancellation, art shows, what have you. So how has that affected your, shall we say, your lifestyle as a professional?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was scary at the beginning, wasn't it, for everybody, for our health, for how the world was going to change, for the market. I have to be very thankful for how it came out for me, because really the gallery is nothing but a studio in the back with a showroom on the front. So all I had to do was put a sign saying by appointment only, and really I have been more productive having the door closed.
Yes.
And just being the introvert that I am in the back keep working. And so I've actually been more productive than normal. With my clients are still buying maybe more than normal. I can't explain it.
Well, now, while we have time in this first segment, we are going to take a tour of the gallery and his studio where he does this magnificent work. So you want to stay tuned for that in that second segment. I guess I could ask you about Washington, Missouri. Since you've moved from the St. Louis area, how can you identify Washington? I know I'll be visiting today with Gary Lewis and a couple others, maybe Ron Ferkel.
Yeah.
So it's like a great community. How do you describe Washington, Missouri?
It is a great little community, and it's thriving, little river town, and it's very much German heritage, and you can still feel that in its traditional buildings, and people have been here for many generations. We are newcomers to that, but we're welcomed. My wife happens to be a German immigrant. Her whole first part of her life was in her native Germany, in Mainz, Germany, and so for her, she can feel many of the flavors from the German immigrants that came and made Washington.
The food, probably.
Yeah, and then traditions, and so it's got a rich history, and that's reflected in some of my paintings too, for the Germanic, history here. But the hard-working farmers, and but this town is thriving despite COVID. New businesses are happening all the time. Can't really explain it. Try to explain it, but we're just enjoying it as it happens.
Yes.
So.
And we're only the gallery's only like a block from the Missouri River.
Yeah.
You can see a slice of it as Brian shared with me earlier. So if you want a taste of the river, it's almost like a Hannibal, but on a different level. So we invite you to visit the gallery. By appointment only, I guess. We'll be giving that information.
Yeah, things are starting to open up, so I'll start to open it up a little bit, but I sure like having the door closed and I can just keep working.
Yes, I can imagine. That can be distracting when you're trying to work on a piece. Well, that's great. Well, you know, I am having the Call for Nature's Art at the Run Center, May and June coming up, getting things ready. We'll have over, well, right now we're at 42 artists, and maybe cutting off at about 60. So I have invited you to exhibit a piece for May and June. And so hopefully if we can share with the viewers, those that can make it to the Run Center in Jefferson, Missouri, they can take a look firsthand at a print or at an actual painting. So that invite is still open. Well, take a break and we'll come back and learn what it's like to work with the brush and the work table in the park, plus somewhat of a tour of the gallery. Brian will fill us in on his future plans, also for this year 2021, the future, and will give us a tour, as I said a moment ago. So there's much more here on Spotlight on the Arts, so stay with us.
Welcome back. Our contestants reached the final round, where he's faced with 3 difficult choices. Behind curtain number 1, more alcohol than your body could ever survive. Behind curtain number 2, dangerous, mind-altering drugs. And behind curtain number 3, we have your family, your friends, and your self-respect. All right, Luke, what's it gonna be? Come on, Luke. 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 You want another beer?
Welcome back to Spotlight on the Arts. I'm at the gallery and studio of Bryan Haynes in Washington, Missouri. We welcome Brian back to the program.
Well, this is one of my more popular paintings, and it's called Spring Creek, and it was commissioned by a gentleman who's a foremost collector of Osage artifacts in the state. And he has quite a collection that's really amazing. And I had the pleasure of holding in my hands a beautiful hand-carved Osage gunstock club. That's what it's called. And we can date it because there was a metal blade inserted in the wooden Osage hardwood club, and it was dated from 1750. So that was a French trade item, the blade. It's right here in the middle of the painting. And the gentleman came to me with this artifact and asked me if I could create a painting just around that artifact. Could I create a story built on that piece of beautiful carving? So it was such a treat to do that. So I start out with many sketches, pretty much the old-fashioned way, and build the sketches more and more refined and get to a color study, which I then present to the client to see if he likes the way it looks. He loved how it was going, and so I went to the final painting. And in this story that I was telling around the club, I wanted to create the menace of the Osage warriors moving through the forest with the beauty of springtime. So to have that contrast in my storytelling. And then as they're moving through the forest, just for a moment, have the central warrior, briefly look over at the viewer. So he's connecting right with the viewer with his eyes looking at you, because I thought, what would it have been like to have these warriors moving through the forest and to witness you as they go by? I mean, it would have been terrifying, because we know many of the Osage were large people. They still are, actually in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, on their reservation. But at the time, 1750s, 1790s, when Daniel Boone came to the area, he met Osage warriors who typically 6'4", 6'5", 6'7", when Daniel Boone was a diminutive, maybe 5'7". So they would be incredibly intimidating at the time. So it just became a wonderful way to tell a story using figures in landscape. Well, what I've found out in my career is if I do paintings that I enjoy, then miraculously other people seem to enjoy it. I mean, that sounds simple, but what this series of oak trees started out as simply paintings that I just did for myself, and then to my surprise, people came to me with giants that are on their property that they wanted to commission, almost a portrait of a tree. And so what a pleasure to do large paintings that I can really slow down, enjoy the detail, enjoy creating the organic sculpture that are different kinds of trees. An oak tree has a different character than a sycamore, right? So it was fun to really luxuriate in that architecture of a tree. And then at the end of the day, the client has a wonderful portrait of this behemoth on their property. This one is right across the river. You can almost see across the river where it is in Augusta, Missouri, on the bluffs. And it's a white oak, and the owner has had it dated by the forestry department at more than 400 years old. He won't even get close to the base of the tree with his tractor because he doesn't want to compress the soil. That's how much he loves this tree. So it's really just a pleasure to do, and it's been something that people focus on a lot in the gallery. I wanted to tell you about this little painting. This was commissioned by a gentleman who owns the Deloge property, which it's over here on this side of the state near the St. Louis, and it's overlooking the Missouri River, looking out over the Missouri bottoms all the way to Alton, Illinois, what's now Alton, Illinois. And there's a huge mansion up there this gentleman bought, and he wanted to commission a story to be told about the foundations of an old cabin they had on this property. And it is known to be where Cadet Choteau, that's the grandson of Auguste Choteau, the co-founder of St. Louis, his grandson built this little cabin here as a lookout over the river. Now what his scheme was, if he could see fur traders coming down from the west, this is about 1809, with full flatboats of goods, he would mount his horse and ride the 17 miles overland to St. Louis and reach the riverfront before the fur traders got there. And he would corner the market thinking about a good price all the way on the 17 miles. And when he arrived, he cornered the market on the goods that were about to arrive. So he made quite a killing, and he often had Osage companions with him. So this ended up being a painting that the gentleman who owns this property really enjoys and has in his mansion now to tell that story. Well, I'd like to tell you about this painting. This is actually a print that I make here in the studio on canvas, and it's a reduction. So this painting is actually 6 feet tall. This is a 5 foot tall print, but it resides now, this painting does, the original, at the people's house who commissioned this painting to commemorate their 30th wedding anniversary. So this is the gentleman in his younger days. He's older now, he's an architect, and they have a beautiful home in downtown St. Louis, and this is above the mantelpiece. This is Art, that's his name, when he was a young man, and he collects duck decoys, which I had no idea until I learned through him what an incredible art form that is. And so he wanted his hunting represented in the painting. They wanted something to do with the Mississippi River and this place that they used to have a cabin that overlooked this romantic view of the Mississippi River, and they wanted to say something about the love for each other. And so I don't know why it occurred to me, but I wanted to introduce Greek mythology into their lives. So here is Icarus and Persephone, and it talks a lot about the craftsman, the lonely craftsman, in this case a woodcarver, and what he's dreaming about as he creates his work. In other words, his muse. The woodcarver's muse is Icarus in this painting. And so they were delighted with the finished painting, and you can come see it here in the gallery.
Brian, before the break, you shared a lot of information, so let's continue along those lines of thought and expression. Your book, Living with the River, is this still available? When is the next book planned for, or if that is the case?
Yeah, it's available absolutely at many vendors in the St. Louis and across the state. It's growing up with the river, and it tells the story of 9 fictional generations of children who grew up along the Missouri River, dating back to the Lewis and Clark expedition up to the present and into the future. So it's written by my wonderful friends Dan and Connie Burkhart, and it's just a wonderful collection of stories.
Well, thank you. And you have more books on the way, right?
Yeah, I'm waiting for them to tell me what they will be. So they're wonderful people to work with. They work with a lot of conservation organizations, and that's what the focus of many of the books are now.
Yes. And what is your latest publication, Brian?
Well, it's the cover of the autobiography of Dr. Peter Raven. He was the director of the Missouri Botanical Garden for 40 years, and so I'm proud to have my work on his cover. The Saturday Evening Post had a magazine cover for my work last September.
Yes, I remember recalling that, keeping up with your artwork. Missouri Life magazine, in fact, recognized your talents recently with a front cover, a storyline, The Tribes of Missouri.
Yeah.
That was so impressive. Please share with us how it felt to be published by Missouri Life and the story, if you would, behind that painting.
Well, Greg and Danita are always generous coming to me for illustrating some of their stories. So I thought the series about the Osage were incredible, and I learned quite a bit from the writer about that, and was pleased to have my work grace the pages.
Yes, excellent. Very representative. Well, Brian, you do some awesome work. I'd like to next step into some of the technical ends for our viewers, how you come up with these creations, and what's before us. They're a beautiful painting, it looks like, in progress. And so share some of your secrets if you can.
Well, no secret, pretty plain and simple to me anyway. This is a commission for a gentleman who's a master gardener. This is his home. I don't know if you can make it out. It's penciled in Chesterfield, Missouri, and around are his creation of a landscape that he's hand created for 40 years. It's a beautiful place. And each tree has got a specific story behind it. So this will be highly detailed. What you're looking at now is a morning's worth of work, getting everything roughed in. So this is an underpainting that will be detailed later. It's to tell the story of his property kind of in the fall season. But I'd like to walk you over here if you'd like to see a palette of a commercial illustrator, because that's what I am still from the days of commercial art. I've been doing this for 38 years, and the first 25 were as a commercial illustrator. So I work in acrylic because it dries fast, because in those days you wanted it to dry overnight and have the painting shipped off to a publisher or a printer, wherever that might be, New York or Los Angeles or Tokyo. What I like to do is have the primaries, obviously, one yellow, a red, and a cool, a warm and a cool red, and a warm and a cool blue. And through that, with a couple of burnt umber and sienna, and just a green thrown in, I have the full spectrum at my hand. All right, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about the method starting from the beginning. So this project is a large 30-foot wide mural that I'll be doing for a business downtown St. Louis. I have to be confidential about who it is, but this is a typical way to start. Of course, they come to me with the story they'd like to tell, and then ideas just start in the sketchbook, super crude. But as all the artists here, I'm sure know, we just start off super basic, but then quickly go to a sketch that starts to organize the space. So it really is just dividing up such a huge story to tell. It'll be 30 feet wide, as I said. This is just for me to see. I start to get more finished drawing that starts to outline the shapes. And then from there, I go to these rough little paper color sketch, I call it, just for myself. No one else will see this, just to start to organize and map out the color. And then finally, I get to a rough study stage, and this I'll actually show to the client and get their approval. Now, there'll be many iterations after this that will change and shift, but they can see now, they can visualize what I'm thinking about and what story I'm beginning to tell. And for an example of a completed mural, I'd like to show you this. This is a print, a much reduced size print of the painting I did for Arrowhead Stadium. Sharon Hunt, owner of the Chiefs, came to me and asked if I would represent the state of Missouri in a mural painting that's now installed at Arrowhead Stadium. The original is 14 feet wide, so this is a much reduced size print, but she let me do whatever I wanted, and I wanted to tell the story of the past and the future of our state. And our proud, I think the people in our state, we should be proud of our integrity, our hardworking, kind of Midwestern character. So that's what I ended up naming the painting, in Midwestern character. But I also wanted to note the future. And we are the center of plant science research in this state. And so I wanted to represent in these swirls of the DNA double helix. And if you were to get up close, as visitors can in Arrowhead Stadium, within these swirls are represented all the mammals of the state, the invertebrates, the fish, the plants, insects are shown throughout the swirls of DNA double helix. And so they ended up being very pleased with the final painting.
Well, Brian, that was a great presentation. You gave us some insight to your method of madness, I guess.
Thanks.
Well, people will be wondering how they can get a hold of you, I'm sure, after the show. So would you like to give your website?
Sure. I'd love for people to come visit the website. It's a little bit long, so it's www.artbybryanhaynes, and Bryan Haynes is spelled Bryanhaynes.
Super, super. I'm sure that people will be looking into that. Well, Brian, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for inviting me up to the gallery in the studio. It's so good to see you again and visit with you and learn even more about the awesome art of Bryan Haynes. So I want to thank you again.
Enjoyed your visit. Thanks for coming by.
All right, thank you. Well, that's another Spotlight on the Arts coming to you from Washington, Missouri. A little small town city of some awesome artists, if you ever get this way, and a great Missouri River that a lot of people have grown up to know. So I want to thank the viewers for tuning in today, watching the show, and my cameraman, Jeremy Cash Woodall, for assisting today. That's another Spotlight on the Arts coming to you from Washington, Missouri. I'm Rick J. saying thanks again. Remember, you can tune in to Spotlight on the Arts on YouTube, Rick J. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
you.